What is that for? Oh, it's for teacups. Got it. I mean, can you stand it? They're the coolest. Wouldn't you want to drink out of that? I never did.
On a gray London morning, when the Thames glimmered with the faint light of a reluctant sun and the city seemed to hum its usual Saturday rhythm, Dakota Johnson stirred awake in her penthouse overlooking the harbor, her eyes softening as she caught sight of Sam Heughan in the kitchen, barefoot, dressed in a white t-shirt and worn sweatpants, moving with a quiet familiarity that had, over the past 8 months, become the backdrop of her mornings, a presence that brought her comfort in its steadiness, its unspoken promise of companionship without drama, without storm, without spectacle, the sort of love that felt like the hum of a lullaby, gentle, mature, safe. She had always thought safety was enough, that silence, when shared with someone who understood it, could be more eloquent than words, and so their life together was built on this subtle foundation of quiet mornings, shared looks, and small, domestic rituals. The way he brewed coffee with precision, the way she stacked books in neat piles, the way they moved around one another like dancers in a choreography they had never rehearsed yet always performed with perfect grace. Yet fate has a way of revealing cracks in the walls we thought unshakable, and for Dakota that revelation came that same afternoon when, while reorganizing the shelves in their study, her eyes caught a card face down on Sam's desk, its paper plain, its presence almost too casual to be important, and yet as she picked it up and turned it over, her breath faltered, for written in familiar handwriting was a message too simple and too haunting to ignore. To Sam, if you can come, I'll be happy. If you can't, I'll understand. See. No date, no address, no signature beyond the single initial, but Dakota did not need more, because she knew the loops and strokes of that handwriting, the tilt of the letters, the way the ink pressed slightly harder on certain syllables. It was the handwriting of Caitriona Balfe, the woman who had hovered ghost-like over their relationship since its beginning, not through actions or words, but through remnants of memory that refused to leave. A faded photograph from the Outlander set tucked into a drawer, a pen engraved with Claire lying forgotten in a box, an old newspaper folded carefully with the headline, Sam Heughan and Caitriona Balfe, lovers without a name. Dakota had never been one to pry, yet the shadows of another woman had followed them from the very first time she had stepped into Sam's world, and although she had once asked him gently, "Did you love her?" he had neither denied nor confirmed, instead offering her a smile that was tinged with melancholy and resignation, as though the truth itself was too delicate to hold. "If I hadn't loved her, I wouldn't be who I am." Those words had sat in her chest like a stone, because they did not say yes and they did not say no, but they said enough to make her understand that Caitriona had shaped him in ways no one else could, that she was more than a co-star, more than a rumor, more than a chapter closed. And so, when Caitriona's 46th birthday arrived, celebrated not with glittering red carpets or the blinding flash of cameras, but in the hushed intimacy of an old Edinburgh mansion, surrounded only by directors, musicians, and a handful of trusted friends, Sam was there, his presence quiet yet unmissable, a truth he could not keep from himself even if he tried. He had not told Dakota the real reason for his sudden departure. Instead, he had scribbled a note on the kitchen counter. "I have an emergency in Scotland. Just one day, don't wait." But Dakota did wait. She waited through the endless night, her heart restless not out of jealousy, because jealousy belonged to the young, to the insecure, and she was neither, but out of the sharp sting of realization that the man she loved had chosen to walk back into the orbit of the woman he had never truly let go. She couldn't sleep as she replayed their moments together, the easy laughter, the soft silences, the illusion of completion, and she wondered whether she had been loving only half of a man, the other half always wandering somewhere across the sea. Meanwhile, in the mansion outside Edinburgh, where ivy crawled up ancient stone and the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and blooming gardens, Caitriona stood on the balcony in a simple black dress, her hair falling freely, her eyes carrying the wisdom of years, but the spark of someone whose laughter had always seemed too bright for the world to contain. When Sam arrived, their eyes met across the distance of the balcony and the garden, and she smiled, the same smile that had once carried him through endless filming days, through shared struggles, through a decade of whispered rumors and silent companionship. "You came," she said softly, her voice both surprised and not at all surprised. "You always come," Sam answered, and in those 3 words was an entire history of appearances, reunions, and unspoken promises. The party itself was lively, filled with toasts, music, and easy chatter. Yet between Sam and Caitriona there was always a space, too charged to be filled by others. Silences that lingered like ghosts between bursts of laughter, glances that stretched just a heartbeat too long, the kind of unarticulated tension that even years of denial cannot fully bury. When at last the guests departed, leaving only the faint echo of music in the halls and the crackle of fire in the hearth, Sam and Caitriona found themselves seated side by side on the wooden benches near the fire pit in the garden, the flames painting their faces with shifting gold. The night was quiet except for the whisper of wind through trees, and it was then, with no one else to intrude, that Sam turned to her, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that belonged not to the safety of silence, but to the rawness of truth, a truth that neither London mornings nor handwritten cards could disguise any longer.
Or I do, I hold myself and then it's a release and then you know that that's done and we've got that. So then we moved on to Johnny's coverage and I was on the other side.
It is one of those stories that, when told in fragments, sounds simple, almost like the outline of a film one might watch on a rainy Sunday afternoon, yet when lived by the people involved, carries the full weight of longing, memory, regret, and the cruel unpredictability of human attachment. Sam Heughan, a man who had long walked the tightrope between expectation and desire, found himself entangled in a quiet storm of affection and indecision, a storm that did not roar with the violence of betrayal or the vulgarity of scandal, but instead whispered with the subtle persistence of memory, of what had once been, and of what might have been had courage aligned differently with circumstance. And it all came to a head one night, beginning not with a confession but with a question, the kind of question that does not seek a simple answer but rather presses upon the heart until silence itself becomes a form of revelation. Caitriona, standing with her glass of wine, firelight flickering against her dark hair, had asked softly, "Why did you invite me?" And when Sam, struggling against his own walls, returned the question with another, "Because I wanted to know, do you ever think about me?" The moment was charged with that old electricity, the unspoken knowledge that time had passed yet nothing had really gone away, for the body forgets less than the mind pretends, and love, or at least the echo of it, has a way of staining the present with the color of the past, so that even silence becomes heavy with meanings too large for words. Sam did not reply immediately. He lingered with his wine, staring into the flames as if answers could be coaxed from embers, and then, with the pause stretching into eternity, he said, "There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it." And with that admission, the boundary between memory and reality collapsed once again, and the two of them were left not as colleagues or friends, but as former lovers caught in the impossible tension of unfinished sentences. The conflict, however, was not really with Caitriona, but with the life Sam had attempted to build in her absence. And the very next morning, when he returned to London, Dakota was waiting, seated on the sofa of their shared flat, her phone placed before her like an unspoken accusation, its glowing screen still showing the grainy images of paparazzi who had managed to capture Sam entering the Edinburgh mansion, proof not of infidelity in its crudest form, but of emotional ambiguity that cuts deeper than physical betrayal ever could. And Dakota, with her calm poise, asked the only question that mattered, "You were there with her?" To which Sam, knowing that lies were useless, simply nodded, a gesture that hurt more than denial could, because it carried not guilt but truth, and in truth there is always the seed of finality. Dakota, remarkably, did not cry or raise her voice. She simply asked again, "Do you love her?" And Sam, torn between what was and what is, could only manage, "I don't know, but I know that when I'm with you, I shouldn't think about her." A line that was both confession and condemnation, for it revealed that Dakota had never truly had all of him, only the part that tried desperately to live in the present, while another part was still entangled with a ghost, and Dakota, strong in her quiet dignity, laughed with that strangled sound that is neither humor nor despair but a mixture of both, before replying, "I don't need someone who's forgetting someone. I need someone who has forgotten." And in that moment she knew, as women often do, that her place in his heart was secondary, that she had been the comfort, but not the center. The shelter, but not the storm, and she refused to live in that half-light. Within 2 days, Dakota had left, not with drama but with grace, leaving behind only a brown leather notebook with a single handwritten page, a farewell that carried more weight than tears could have. When you have to choose between the person who makes you feel safe and the person who makes you feel insecure but can't take your eyes off, I know I've lost. But I still hope one day when you stop looking at the past, you'll realize how beautiful the present is. And Sam, upon reading those lines, felt not only the pain of loss but also the clarity of being seen, for Dakota had understood him perhaps better than he had ever understood himself, and her words laid bare the truth of his entrapment between memory and possibility. Yet the story did not end there, for as if fate itself enjoyed toying with him. A month later, Caitriona herself wrote, her letter equally restrained but cutting in its simplicity. "We were something beautiful, but not forever. Don't let me be the reason you lose the one who truly loves you." And this, too, Sam kept, sliding it carefully into the same drawer where Dakota's notebook rested, side by side like artifacts of a war that had no victors, only casualties of hesitation. And it became clear then that his tragedy was not in having chosen wrongly, but in not having chosen at all, allowing both women to slip away, one into the safety of her own self-respect, the other into the acceptance of a past that could not be resurrected. And so the man who had been adored on screen for portraying steadfast love found himself in real life paralyzed by the very thing his audiences believed him to embody, a man not cruel nor careless, but simply human, unable to sever the ties of memory nor fully inhabit the possibilities of the present. And that paralysis, that failure to act decisively, became the quiet ruin of his happiness, leaving behind no scandalous headlines of betrayal or deceit, but rather a tale of melancholy, of how the heart, when divided, often ends with nothing, and how sometimes the most painful truth is not that we love the wrong person, but that we fail to give ourselves wholly to the right one when the chance